Joining us this morning from Chicago, Illinois, Congressman Rahm Emanuel, who will be the new president's chief of staff at the White House. Congressman, welcome to Face the Nation. Hope we'll see you many times along the way here.
Good to see you, Bob. How are you?
Well, let's get right to it. How soon is the president-elect going to get his economic team in place?
Well, President-elect Obama has, as you saw Friday, met with a group of economic advisors outside to talk about the economy and get a report from them on what they're seeing and hearing. He has been working tirelessly with the transition team on the development of his economic team. As you heard, he said Friday, Bob, which is he wants us to move with deliberate haste, emphasis on deliberate as well as equal emphasis on haste. And he has been going through the names. The transition team has been developing those names earlier than the election, and so he has a good group of people that he's looking at. But you should know, one cautionary note, in past times, there hasn't been announcements till December. But he has already been meeting, going through the names. He's already participated in a couple of meetings to review people for key economic slots.
But in past times, we haven't had this severe economic crisis. In past times, we haven't had a lame duck session of the Congress looming. Just give us a little time frame here. I'm not asking for a specific date. Do you think he's going to begin to make some announcements in the next week or so, or before December? I mean, just
well, I'm not
ballpark.
As a chief of staff, I'm not going to get in front of the president, Bob. I think let's cue off of what he said Friday. He wants us to move with deliberate haste, equal emphasis on both deliberate and haste. He has those. He has names in front of him. He's reviewing those names. He's known a number of the people, and he will be making the decisions. You'll be obviously when we're ready.
Okay,
when he's ready. You'll hear about it.
All right. So we're not going to get an answer to that this morning. Okay. The second thing, this lame duck session of the Congress, which is quite unusual for a transition here, it's going to start Monday week. The Congress is going to be thinking about some sort of economic stimulus package. How will he insert himself in that? Is he going to come? He's obviously a member of the Senate. He'll be here. I assume he would vote on whatever the Senate comes up with, but is he going to take a leadership role in that?
Well, listen, obviously what you said, Bob, on the first question, which is about creating the economic team he wants. He has to, the president-elect has to, and what we're going to help him do is set up his White House as well as his cabinet. Second is he's asked, as he said Friday at the press conference, for the Washington now to begin to work on the Economic Recovery Act that deals with the Friday unemployment numbers that we have now 10 million Americans without work who are ready to work. The retail sales that show a decline in sales across the country where there's a great deal of contraction, and the fact that people are losing, because they're losing jobs, losing health care. So he said there's not a time to waste for Washington now to get to work and do that its work on helping the American people through this basic contraction that's going on in the economy, this recession. And it's time for them to get that going.
Well,
and he called for them to pass an Economic Recovery Act.
Well, I understand all that, but is he going to be on the Senate floor as a senator from Illinois, or will he stay in Chicago and work on his economic team? I mean, surely you can give us a little detail or a little insight into that.
Bob, I think that the basic approach has been he's going to be here in Chicago, setting up his not only his economic team, but the policies he wants to outline for the country as soon as he gets sworn in, so he hit the ground running. And it's imperative that this time in Washington be used to deal with the type of reports that we just saw last week. Just two different reports showing the type of constraints and strains that are being put on the economy, that Washington should get to work passing that immediate action to help both states provide health care for those who are losing it, unemployment insurance for those who are losing their jobs. That Economic Recovery Act exists today in Washington. It should be worked with people from both parties to getting it done and getting it to the president's desk so we can help the American people who are hurting right now.
So do I take it he's going to leave the lame duck session to the Senate and to the congressional leaders? He's not going to take any role in that.
Well, he called for action, and I think as you said, this is an unusual time, and so he has repeated you have Washington ready to work, get to work to help the American people. We have one president at a time. That should work on. He's going to, as he did on Friday, encourage the Washington to move immediately because of what's happening to the economy, which means what's happening to the American people. And he will also do, because he doesn't want to waste a single day, getting his cabinet, his government, and his policies in place to move forward on January 20, as soon as he is sworn in.
Does he intend to urge the White House and the members of Congress to help in some sort of a bailout plan for the auto industry? They say they got to have some help here.
Right.
I know he says they need to be part of any economic plan, but is he going to be for, and will he advocate that the White House go along and the White House team go along with what Senator Reid and Congresswoman Pelosi are advocating?
Well, first of all, Bob, President-elect Obama has repeated that there's one president, one administration at a time, and so you don't want to get in front of that. Second, as it relates to the auto industry, he has said throughout the campaign, and as recently as Friday, they are an essential part of our economy and our industrial base. Second, Washington needs to look at fast-forwarding the $25 billion that has been provided for retooling the factories for basically a more fuel-efficient auto fleet. Third, there are existing authorities within the government today that the administration should tap to help the auto industry. Fourth, President-elect Obama has asked his economic team and advisors to come up with a series of proposals that would help the auto industry retool, restructure, and refit, with an eye towards a future where you have an auto industry that's part of a strong economy and also focused on reducing America's dependence on foreign oil. So all four of those have been, he has called for, with the primary premise underscoring that you have the auto industry is an essential component of our economy.
Will he push for permanent tax cuts for the middle class as president? And would he consider postponing the tax increases on the upper income of folk until we get past this economic crisis we're in right now?
Let me take both of those questions. First of all, President-elect Obama's economic plan was developed on the premise that the middle class is working harder, earning less, and paying more. Median household income has declined by $2,000, while energy costs, healthcare costs, as well as educational costs have all gone up $4,800. And the basic strategy was we need to deal with the stress and strains on the middle class. So his economic plan, not limited to, but focused on the tax side, is to provide the middle class, working Americans, 95% of them, with a $1,000 tax cut. His tax plan is a net tax reduction. It was focused on the middle class. In addition to that, because of the size of the scope of the crisis, we must deal with our educational reforms, our energy reforms, so we're not exporting $700 billion of our wealth, that we reduce our dependence on foreign oil while increasing our investments in alternatives. Deal with healthcare reform so we can both contain costs and expand coverage. All of those, not limited to that, as well as a tax reform package that is both progressive, well, as fair, as well as simplified. Okay. All of those are part of an economic strategy, not just one component, that take us both not only dealing with the immediate crisis we have, but it puts America on a long, sustained recovery and strengthens America for the long term economically.
When he takes office, obviously all of the things that he promised to do in the campaign, he's not going to be able to do because of the pressure of this economic situation. During the debates, I asked both Senator Obama and Senator McCain to give us some priorities, because we asked people to run the numbers on all of the things that they had promised. And when you add up all of the costs and the spending cuts, it came out that both of their programs would add at least $200 billion to the current deficit. What are going to be his priorities? Obviously, he can't do, or will he try to do everything at once, the Big Bang Theory, as some are saying, or is he going to put some things first and put them in some order? Give us some sense of that.
Well, first of all, I would add, Bob, let me say this. There's a premise to the question that somehow the challenges we have require that you postpone things. I don't look, we've had a healthcare crisis in this country for well over 30 or 40 years.
Let me just interrupt here. Yeah. We are also facing what could be a $1 trillion deficit. That's different, Mr. Emanuel.
Yeah, Bob, that's true. But let me then go at this point. everybody, Democratic and Republican economists, as President-elect Obama has cited, agree we need a short-term economic recovery act that helps Americans both go to work by building our roads, our bridges, our schools, and our water systems that have all basically been denied funds over the years. Second, it also includes a tax rebate for middle-class families who have had strain. Over the long term, you must have an economic strategy that reforms our education, our healthcare, our energy, our tax code, as well as putting fiscal discipline back in our economic toolkit. So you have an immediate problem, as well as a long-term strategy for a sustained economic growth over the long term that strengthens America rather than weaken it. And here is where the philosophy, I think, is important. The crisis we have today, as he has said, is an opportunity to finally do what Washington for years has postponed and kicked down the road. We have postponed dealing with an energy crisis since 1974. We had a crisis, we kicked it down the can, and now we are exporting $700 billion of our wealth. We had a healthcare crisis. Healthcare costs were $5,300 for a middle-class family. Today, the premiums are $12,000 for middle-class families. These are just taking those two examples. These are crises you can no longer afford to kick down the can. The crisis we have here, the American people know we have one, and they are ready and willing to start to tackle those problems. You cannot afford now to kick those down the can any longer. We have a short-term need of getting the economy moving, which means getting Americans working, and also a long-term objective of putting us on a sustained road for economic growth over the long term.
All right. Well, perhaps we'll find out another day how he will line those up and what priorities he will set. Thank you,
Bob,
Rahm Emanuel. Hope to see you again.